In the past year, Pokemon has gained a lot of traction in media, mostly because Pokemon Go is a godsend for people who need an excuse to not die from a blood clot. But whether it be attention from an autistic Russian kid or the most diehard of fans, there are still some Pokemon who get left out. We're here to talk today about the poor guys who are either neglected by Nintendo, the fans, or their own kind. I'll factor in how some have better evolutionary counterparts, their stats, certain features, and neglects in the game and anime. And of course, the Pokemon that fans love to hate. If you ever have to question yourself on one of the choices I put on here, then just ask, well, do you think they'd bring a gun to their high school? I hope you guys enjoy this list and make sure you post your list in the comments. Let's go! So normally when you grow, you get bigger, stronger, more imposing. Sometimes evolution takes a step backwards and just makes you so much worse. See, Chauncey is the famed wall of Pokemon, right? This bad boy can take hit after hit and not go down. But Blissey is the evolution of Chauncey. Blissey's stats aren't that great of an improvement. If the Chauncey has an Eviolite, then it basically has better defensive stats than Blissey, without the cost of looking like a goddamn egg. Chauncey was perfect, just like you had her, then you had to go and mess it up. I mean, this Pokemon's so easily forgotten that you probably didn't notice that I colored Blissey entirely pink and put an eggplant emoji between Happini's legs. And also, why in the damn hell is Blissey's species listed as happiness? That's an emotion, not a damn species. Charles Darwin didn't visit the Galapagos and say, alright, we have the finch species, the tortoise species, and the fucking happiness species. But I digress. Blissey is a pretty easily forgotten Pokemon, and that's why she's number 10 on the list. Third gen has always been close to my heart, and so have the Pokemon that were in it. Pokemon like Roselia and Roserade, who would come later, were kind of neat Pokemon, but then in the 4th gen, they did something weird and added Budew into the mix. And why the hell did they have to do that? See, Roselia and Roserade were a great couple of Pokemon, but adding Budew just screws it all up. Budew is so forgettable that if you put him next to nearly any grass-type Pokemon, you can convince someone that Budew is its pre-evolution. For example, Budew could easily evolve into Cherubi and still totally be passable. With a little love and care, you can also make it evolve into a Petalil. And if you give it a few extra chromosomes, you will totally make it evolve into a Swablu. Budew is the definition of a bland-ass motherfucker in the Pokemon world. No one really needs him, and that is for the most part why he's become so easily forgettable. With the new release of every Pokemon game, some of the first questions always focus on the starters. What they'll look like, what role they'll play in the story, will I have to turn to hard drugs if there's another firefighting type? But there's always a special question to be asked. Who's going to get the short end of the dick this time around? Normally there's 2 starter Pokemon that are focused on. One's really cool and one is really graceful. And then there's the one that no one gives a shit about. And who better to be on this list than the OG ostracized starter, Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur is on here because starting off the first generation, we had some amazing starter Pokemon. Blastoise is of course one of my favorites, and Charizard is universally loved. But poor old Bulbasaur is just the odd one out. It's just a little plant scrotum and never really caught a lot of attention. Plus here in America we got Red and Blue to start off, so we never ended up having Bulbasaur in his own game until the 3rd gen with the remakes. So he's always kind of been cast in the 3rd place when it comes to the starters. The fuck do you want? So 5th gen Pokemon are normally looked at pretty poorly, but poor Garbodor here really gets the short end of the stick. Not only is he neglected, but he's just outright reviled. Like, it's kinda cute, right? It's some fucking trash. Is some fucking trash. But this Pokemon, for some reason, is regarded as the flagship representation for shitty Pokemon. He's the representation of all the poorly designed Pokemon for no real specific reason, other than the fact that he's got a simple design. So here I stand in front of you campaigning. Hashtag Garbodor Lives Matter. This guy gets too much shit and neglect for a Pokemon that is already literally shit and neglect. I believe that he deserves better. And you all should give him a chance too. Throughout Pokemon, we've seen plenty of controversy. Sometimes we threw some seizures in there, some nudity, and then we pissed off some black people. See, Jinx went through a lot of recreation because, I mean, to be honest, this looks like blackface. You have to be pretty tone deaf not to see that. But while Jinx received all of this backlash and attention, it had a pre-evolution that just continued to be shitty. See, at least Jinx got some notoriety for being a semi-racist symbol. Smoochum, however, got nothing because it doesn't matter. When a bunch of Pokemon got the baby pre-evolutions, some were pretty cool, like Elekid, that's a good Pokemon. Smoochum has nothing to it. It just evolves into this Mr. Popo looking ass. But I can't blame people for not caring about it. I mean, it looks like the little girl on the playground that you just want to kick. And even after this, Nintendo has persisted to forget about it. Jinx was one of the only Pokemon from the first gen not to get an evolution in the fourth gen, like Magmortar, Rhyperior, and others. So overall, the Jinx line is neglected. But at least Jinx got some attention for being a racial slur. Smoochum got to be the underling of the thing that got censored. That's almost the worst thing you can be. Baby Pokemon can be really cool. They offer a pre-evolution to an interesting Pokemon, right? In fact, they give a lot of them to Gen 2, just like Magby, Elekid, and Smoochum. They were ways to evolve into larger versions of them and add a separate aspect of breeding to the game. However, where this doesn't work is in Legendaries. You see, Fiona falls into this special gray area where you have to go through an extra amount of bullshit to get something worse than what you originally had. If you already have a Manaphy, then you're pretty much set, right? But if you decide to breed it, then you will be unfortunate enough to get a Fiona, the retarded cousin of the Legendaries. Clearly, since it's a baby form, Fiona has lower stats, but there is no actual way to obtain it other than breeding. So why the fuck would you want it? You're going out of your way to lower your overall worth. I mean, I don't even feel bad for this shit being neglected. It should be. Nintendo has had some weird censorship things in the past, such as censoring anything that remotely relates to Project Melee by typing letters PM, as if that isn't a concept of time or anything. But also they managed to censor their own damn Pokemon. I present you with the most unintentional of homophobic slurs, Agrius. I consider Agrius to be neglected because, for a period of time, he was completely untradeable on the GTS because, well, I guess Nintendo has a problem with him identifying as fag. But now that it's 2016 and I can identify as a non-binary slapchop, everything is tilting Agrius' favor because he is tradable with his own name. But seriously, how can you overlook the censorship of the shit you name your own Pokemon? Like, I get not letting me trade the Diglett that I named Dirt Dong, but seriously, you're the ones who neglected to fix the censor for so long on your own Pokemon. The gender differences between male and female Pokemon can be really interesting, such as Venusaur's flower being different based on gender. I mean, I don't really have a problem with any of the gender-varied Pokemon. Oh! Why would you do that to an animal? You see, male Unfezant has a pretty nice appeal to it. It's got some nice plumage on top, some attractive green on the underside. Hey, you know, I can get into it. It even has some decent base stats. What's really shitty about it is what they did to the female form. It's like Nintendo neglected to add anything of interest to this Pokemon. It's a fucking bird with dirt caked on it. Who wants that? Apparently, it's also the proud Pokemon. What the fuck do you have to be proud of? Compared to its male counterpart, Unfezant really got the shitty end of the deal. And I get that it parallels real-life peacocks and how the females are actually ugly as shit, but why would you ever want to do the same as nature? Nature's a dick. Most of the Pokemon are on here because of some stupid design choices of Nintendo's or because they're kind of fucking hideous. But very few are on here just because the community hates them. But whenever you have an entire item basically dedicated to shunning you, then you might be a bit of a reject. See, I don't even mind Zubat, but this is the hit it and quit it type Pokemon. You see this thing one damn time and that's enough. But that's not how life works. Just like the crackhead down my street, you see this bad boy at every turn you take. There's no getting away from this winged rodent. And that sentiment is pretty well felt across the entire community. Who the fuck ever wants to see this thing? Half of this bitch's body is a mouth. And I don't know about you, but that's not how I want to use my Pokemon. Pokemon become notable because of their appearances on box art, in common media, in standals, and in integral parts of the story. This is very much the way in which Pikachu became an icon of the series. He's the little rat guy on TV that to your mother is also somehow every other Pokemon in the show. However, the limelight of some Pokemon can also easily be the overcast of others. I just straight up feel bad for Raichu, man. I mean, there is absolutely no reason that Pikachu shouldn't evolve into Raichu. I mean, it's a jump in almost 170 total base stats, and Raichu is just a hell of a lot cooler than Pikachu. But nonetheless, Pikachu persists in the spotlight, all because nobody wants to alienate the famed mascot of the series. And I guess alright, he's got some attention because of his Alolan form. Although, aside from his Z move, which is actually the dankest fucking thing I've ever seen, the added typing of Psychic makes him actually worse than before. The added typing of Psychic now makes him weak to 4 things rather than just a single one from his Electric typing. Strategically, this screws him over even more. So originally, no one wants to evolve Pikachu because, hey, you can't get rid of this guy for something better, because God forbid if that would make any sense. But then they also have the graciousness to give Raichu an Alolan form, which makes him worse. What in the damn hell are these people trying to do to this poor Pokemon? And that's just exactly why Raichu is the most neglected Pokemon on here. Thanks so much for watching my brand new video in my 4th Pokemon month. I really hope you enjoyed it and I hope you'll like the rest to come. They'll be coming out every Sunday at 3 and can only get weirder than this one. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to see more of these, then feel free. On the left there's a playlist for my previous Pokemon month videos. And on the right, there is a link to my previous video on my favorite Ultimates and Smite, so check that out if you want to. My social media is on the screen like always, and I will see you next Sunday.